You lifted the flat stone at the edge of your garden bed, the one that has been sitting there since you built the border, and something exploded out from underneath it. Fast, low, segmented, a blur of legs moving in a wave down each side of a long flattened body, gone into the leaf litter before you even finished the motion of stepping back. Your hand was already coming down, a boot, a trowel, anything within reach. Centipede. The word alone carries a charge that few other garden creatures manage, something ancient and reflexive, faster than thought. But before that boot lands, I need you to know what you almost destroyed beneath that stone, because it was not simply hiding there. It was coiled tightly around something. Something pale, soft, clustered in a careful arrangement that took weeks to build and that cannot survive even a single day without her. Stop. Because what you just disturbed is not a lone pest fleeing capture. It is a mother, mid-vigil, and what she leaves behind if she does not return will not survive the night. Let's start with what was actually under that stone, because the centipede you glimpsed for half a second was almost certainly female, and there is a strong chance she was not alone. Several common garden centipede species, the soil-dwelling members of the order Geophilomorpha and certain stone centipedes and Lithobiomorpha, exhibit a behavior that surprises even people who have studied invertebrates for years. After mating and laying her eggs in a small excavated chamber beneath a rock, a log, or a clump of compacted soil, the female does not leave. She coils her body around the clutch, forming a closed ring with the eggs held at the center, and she stays there. Not for a day. 4 weeks. Sometimes longer than a month, depending on temperature and species, motionless except for one repeated, deliberate action that researchers have documented again and again, she grooms the eggs. She runs her mouthparts and antennae across the surface of each one, repeatedly, removing fungal spores and bacterial growth before they can take hold, a kind of continuous antiseptic maintenance performed with no rest period and no replacement. If a predator approaches the chamber, ants, beetle larvae, other centipedes, she does not flee. She holds her position around the clutch and strikes outward with her forcipules, the modified venomous front legs that every centipede carries, fighting from a defensive coil rather than abandoning the eggs to save herself. This is maternal investment at a level rarely documented in arthropods, and it was happening in complete silence, in total darkness, directly beneath a stone you walk past every single day. I remember reading the first detailed account of this behavior and having to stop and reread the sentence describing what happens when the mother is removed mid-incubation. Researchers running controlled experiments found that eggs separated from a guarding female show dramatically higher rates of fungal infection and predation compared to eggs left under maternal care, in some trials losing the majority of the clutch within days. The mother is not a decoration around the eggs. She is the only thing actively keeping them alive. Let that settle for a moment. The centipede that just vanished into the leaf litter when you lifted that stone, the one your hand was already moving to crush, may have spent the last 3 weeks of her life doing nothing but this. And if she does not return to that exact chamber before nightfall, every egg inside it that survives will do so by chance, with no one removing the fungal spores that were already beginning to grow on their surface the moment her body lifted away. Now look closer at the animal herself, because there is a detail about her body that almost nobody who panics at the sight of a centipede has ever actually noticed, and it is one of the strangest consistent rules in the entire animal kingdom. Count the leg pairs on any centipede you ever encounter, in any garden, on any continent, and you will never, not once, arrive at an even number. 15 pairs. 21 pairs. 171 pairs in some of the longest-bodied soil species. Always odd. This is not coincidence and it is not an estimation error on your part. It is a hard constraint written directly into the developmental biology of the entire class Chilopoda, governed by the pattern in which Hox's genes express themselves during segment formation in the embryo, a genetic architecture so consistent across thousands of described species that an even number of leg pairs has essentially never been documented in nature. You are looking at a mathematical law made of living tissue, repeating itself flawlessly underneath every stone in every garden on earth, and you were about to step on it without ever knowing it was there. And the legs at the very front of that body are not legs at all, not in the way the rest are. The first pair has been reshaped by evolution into forcipules, hollow, claw-like structures connected to venom glands, folded beneath the head and ready to snap forward and inject toxin into prey the instant she makes contact. This is how she hunts, and her hunting style reveals something else researchers have only recently been able to document in detail using laboratory observation. A centipede does not attack every potential meal with the same level of aggression. When presented with prey capable of fighting back, certain wasps, larger spiders, anything carrying its own venom or sting, she will deliver a single envenomating strike and then immediately retreat to a safe distance, waiting, sometimes for several minutes, for the toxin to take full effect before approaching again to feed. She is assessing risk in real time and adjusting her behavior accordingly, a level of tactical decision-making rarely attributed to an invertebrate predator. This same venom apparatus, when it strikes a cockroach, a clothes moth larva, a silverfish, or one of the soft-bodied grubs feeding on your plant roots underground, ends the encounter in seconds. The centipede beneath your stone, mid-vigil around her eggs, was likely responsible for removing dozens of these pests from that exact corner of your garden over the preceding weeks, hunting at night while you slept, never once asking for acknowledgement. So what should you actually do the next time you lift a stone, a log, or a piece of garden edging and find one of these animals coiled in place rather than fleeing immediately? The behavior itself is the signal. A centipede that runs the instant light hits it is simply startled and relocating. A centipede that holds its position, coiled tightly around a pale cluster at its center, is a mother actively guarding a clutch, and the single most important thing you can do is set the stone back down exactly as it was, as gently and as quickly as possible, and walk away. The disturbance of light and air exposure alone is stressful enough without prolonged handling. Within minutes, in darkness again, she will typically resume her coiled position if the eggs remain undisturbed and she has not been forced to abandon the chamber entirely. If you are rearranging a garden bed and must move the stone permanently, do it in a season when you are not likely to encounter an active clutch, generally outside the spring and early summer months when most temperate centipede species are guarding eggs, and always lift garden stones and logs slowly enough to see what is underneath before your other hand commits to anything. There is one more layer to this story, and it concerns what happens after the eggs finally hatch, weeks into the vigil, when the chamber beneath the stone briefly becomes the most crowded place in your entire garden. The hatchlings that emerge do not arrive as miniature adults the way a baby spider does. Many garden centipede species hatch with only a fraction of their final leg count, sometimes as few as 4 pairs, pale, soft, and almost translucent, clustering instinctively against their mother's body for a period that can last several more days before they disperse. Each subsequent molt adds additional segments and additional leg pairs, always odd, always following that same unbroken genetic rule, until the animal eventually reaches the full adult configuration specific to its species, a process called anamorphic development that some centipedes complete within a single season and others stretch across several years depending on environmental conditions. A centipede you find in your garden in early spring may be carrying a body plan that has been under construction, segment by segment, molt by molt, since it first emerged from beneath a stone identical to the one in your hand right now. What looks like a single uniform creature racing across your soil is, biologically, a structure still being built, one careful addition at a time, by an animal whose entire early life depended on a mother who never once left her post. The garden centipede has been performing this exact vigil, in this exact posture, beneath stones and fallen wood for longer than flowering plants have existed on this planet. She asks for nothing from you except the one thing that costs you nothing to give, a moment of hesitation before the stone goes back down, or before the boot comes down, long enough to actually see what you are looking at. Not a pest fleeing justice. A mother in the middle of the only job she has, alone in the dark, holding everything she has left in a tight and motionless ring, waiting for you to simply walk away. Have you ever lifted a stone or piece of garden wood and found a centipede coiled around something rather than fleeing, and wondered what you were actually looking at? Tell me about it in the comments below. I read every single one, and the stories this community shares about what gets found under a single garden stone never stop surprising me. And if you want to understand another creature whose entire survival strategy depends on something it is doing in complete darkness, in a place you will probably never think to look, the next video is already waiting for you.